Boston College, as they did 1 year ago when DJ had his coming out party trailing 28-6 to bring him back to beat Boston College. This time BC is 4-0. Talking Clemson football, of course, with Jason Priester, as we do on a regular basis here at the Voice of College Football. All right, Will Shipley, maybe Lynn J. Dixon should have stuck around for another week or so. So Will Shipley, unfortunately, as you had alluded to, is going to be out at least a few weeks, and he has become the main ball carrier. 21 carries against Georgia Tech. He had 11 against NC State before he got hurt. So again, what appears to be the prognosis on him?
They didn't really go into specifics. They just said he could be back as early as in a couple of weeks. I was hearing he had a torn ACL. I think that was the general consensus. I think they were surprised and relieved to learn that he did not have one, which is really good news because, Brian Bresee tore his ACL in that game. James Skowski left with another stinger. That's his second in 2 weeks. I don't think there's no guarantee he'll be back this week, which it wouldn't surprise me if he was. I'm just saying there's no guarantee. Another starting linebacker, Balin Spector, he left that game injured. He's been dealing with a bum knee. So the injuries are starting to mount up. And as far as Will Shipley's, they've got another freshman running back, Phil Maffa, who they really wanted to redshirt this season. But they're just not going to be able to do that now. Dabo Swinney said they're going to have to use him now. They're not going to be able to hold him any longer. He's going to have to get involved with the offense. I think we'll see Mikey Dukes get involved. They've been trying to get him more involved, but he's just not been as consistent as they want to see in practice. He's had a few carries this year, and he's already had one fumble already in the few carries he's gotten. And with the Shipley injury, the Lynn J. Dixon exit might very well prove to be far more costly than anybody envisioned. But at the same time, I don't think there was anything to be done there. I think the two parties were at an impasse, and it was time to cut ties, and so there's no going back there. So it's like Dabo Swinney says, he's got who he's got, and he's going to have to make do with what they got.
Sometimes those impasses can be taken care of if you can promise 20 or 22 carries a game, though. So maybe that would have been the case, but we'll never know. This Boston College team is no joke. We know that they always bring a stout defense. They always have, or at least in recent years, have had a really good offensive line, one of the better units in the ACC with a lot of NFL players along the offensive front. Unfortunately for them, Phil Jurkovec, who is just a potential great quarterback, got injured in the first game of the season because, saw him play several times last year, and he is a real talent as a transfer from Notre Dame. So they've had to rely on Dennis Grosel, who's a backup quarterback. They've tried to protect him. He did have to throw 29 times because they got into a bit of a shootout with Missouri, as that was an exciting game, and BC won it at home in overtime, 41-34. So we know you haven't done your homework on Boston College yet, but they got running back and Pat Garwo, who ran for 175 yards against a pretty good Missouri defense. So this Boston College bunch, this isn't going to be, despite what Vegas thinks, an easy go at it this Saturday either.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how Clemson could be favored by 2 touchdowns in this game. That's a little mind-blowing. But, yeah, when I think of Boston College, first thing that comes to mind is tough offensive line. They're always going to have the big nasties up front. They're always good along the offensive line. And more often than not, they're going to be tough and physical on the defensive line too. But this Clemson defense is now down both of its starting defensive tackles. And I don't care how much depth you got, that's going to affect your run defense. As good as Clemson's run defense has been, it's going to take a little bit of a hit. And when I think of this Boston College team right now, I think of Zay Flowers, the receiver. The guy from NC State, Clemson, they found a soft spot in that defense, and they just kept throwing it over and over and over and over. And he ended up, Emeka, how you say his name? Emeka Azizi. I think he had 11 catches, way over 100 yards, a couple of touchdowns maybe. Yeah. I know he had the one spectacular touchdown catch in the first half, but And, he was beating out Andrew Booth a lot on a lot of those throws. So Zay Flowers is a guy that scares me when I think about this game. He's really good. I don't care which one of the quarterbacks is playing. That's the guy Clemson has to be wary of. But to me, still got to go back to this Clemson offense. Can they score enough points? Can they generate enough offense and put enough points on the board to even give themselves a chance at winning this game? To me, it starts and stops right there.
Yeah, we had warned people about it. Azizi caught 14 passes for 116 yards. Devin Carter also had a nice game with some big catches for NC State. He had 8 catches. Zay Flowers, yes, against Mizzou, 8 catches, 62 yards, and a touchdown. Boston College actually has better playmakers on that team than they've had in a long, long time. Jalen Gill's a good player. C.J. Lewis is a good player. Travis Levy's a good player. Their defense, though, against Mizzou, so this will be an interesting comparison because of all the issues Clemson's had along the offensive line. No sacks, 1 TFL. 1 tackle for loss in that entire game, overtime game against Mizzou. So they didn't make plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage against Mizzou. So we'll see if they get healthy against that Clemson offensive line.
Well, it won't hurt if DJ's back there holding on to the ball too long. But, yeah. Again, I go back to this Clemson offense and whether or not they can get anything going, create some kind of identity. Now that they've got 2 losses, the pressure's kind of off. And I know fans have complained about the ultra-conservative play call through the first 4 games. And it has been ultra-conservative. But I kind of look at it from a different perspective, or at least I can make this argument. Those have all been 1-score games if you take out the South Carolina State game. To me, that one doesn't count. The rest of them have all been 1-score games. You're 1 play away from winning, 1 play away from losing, and your defense is playing lights out. You got a quarterback who is low on confidence at the moment, receivers that aren't playing well, and an offensive line that's frankly just not living up to its billing. I think I would probably be ultra conservative too and put those games in the hands of my defense and take what on offense, take what the defense is giving me. But now that they've lost 2 games, playoffs off the table, they're not in control of their own destiny, even in the ACC anymore. I'm curious to see this weekend if they won't kind of open things up a little bit. Maybe make it a little bit more fun for some of the players, throw in a reverse, throw in a jet sweep, a flea flicker, a halfback pass, something, anything to create a spark. I mean, you got to do something. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. It's just not working. Hadn't worked for 4 games, and it's not going to work against this Boston College team either.
It's the most talented team in the division. There's no question about that. But if they continue to play like this, it's going to be a fascinating free-for-all. Louisville, NC State, Boston College, Wake. I'm going to throw out Florida State. They're awful. Syracuse, I think they're awful, but they actually beat Liberty this Friday night. They're 3-1 non-conference, so maybe they can pull an upset or 2. But basically, those other 5 teams, there could be wins back and forth all over the place.
Yeah, one thing about this Clemson team being so down this year, it will make the ACC, a little more entertaining, a little more fun to watch. I think we were talking about it before we came on. I would love to see North Carolina State or Wake Forest, not North Carolina State, Boston College or Wake Forest run the table, and go undefeated and see what that playoff committee does with them, because it'll be very hard to keep an undefeated ACC team out the playoff. I don't care if their name is Wake Forest.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter. It should not matter. Jason Priester, allclemson.com on SI. Join him. Follow the trials and travails of this Clemson football team through 2021.
I appreciate it, Mark.
Thank you so much, Jason.